The larger theme here is taking that thing you see to be like a liability and turning it into an asset. I guess the specific thing we're talking about here is being misunderstood. Instead of viewing that as a liability, viewing it as an asset. And I think it really is an asset for entrepreneurs, because your uniqueness gives you a unique perspective on the world, which means you're going to see opportunities that no one else can see.
Yep. That's so funny. That was literally the next point.
Oh, really? Okay.
As an entrepreneur, and we say entrepreneur, but just take that synonymous with anything that's like different. I feel like entrepreneurs are just different.
Entrepreneur is one of those words. It's such a broad category and can mean so many different things.
I want people in all situations to be able to relate and understand, because as an entrepreneur or someone who is starting something new or different, trying to curate your dream life, I feel like by default or by nature are going to choose things that people just don't understand. Right. Because you have to see that your goals, your vision, you have an idea of what your dream life is. Not everybody does that. And that's something that I had to learn and understand. Or maybe they just don't pay attention to it. That's my hypothesis, but I think everyone has it. But a lot of people aren't making that the focus of their life. So the natural tendency is to just go with the default. Everybody listen to your parents before you, look at what everyone else does, follow the crowd. That is the default. So everyone's, at least in America, it seems like most people are going the route of like, I get a formal education. So I go to school, I get a degree. After that, I find a job that can pay me well, and I'm going to try to climb the ranks until, as much as I can, get more money, on that hierarchy, and then have a kid. Okay, so get married, have a kid, get a house, and just keep doing that. Like kind of just going in that cycle. Let me see if I can make more money so I can maintain my family and maybe vacation once a year. Like that's kind of the norm. Yeah. So if you say anything or are going after something that is different from that, you are probably going to be misunderstood. People are going to not, their values, and we talked about values in our first episode, but their values are just different, and that's okay. And you might have different values. So if your value is creativity and someone else's value is stability, if you are doing something, if you're taking risks for the sake of creativity, the person with the value of stability is not going to understand why you're quitting your job to backpack around Europe with all the savings you have to your name. Maybe for you, that's a creative venture. Maybe you're planning to meet artists on your way, or maybe you're planning to, study inspired. Art. Yeah, like be inspired by the art in Europe or something. That is not going to make any sense to them. They're going to be like, why are you doing that? You're not going to have any money. What are you going to do when you get back? And maybe that's something to you. You're just like, I can figure that out. That's not a big deal to me. Right. And I think it's important when you're having those conversations or when you're going through that to not keep it's going to happen. You're going to second guess yourself, but don't practice second guessing yourself. Almost practice sticking to your word and sticking to your values, because it's really hard in those situations to be like, am I doing this because it makes sense with my life, it's my dream life, it's part of my values, or am I doing this because I'm crazy? You're always going to find like a fault in it. And that's something that I think is really important to identify. Don't go to the route of like, oh, I know I've always had this like, trait about me where I do things sporadically, and I like, I don't think things through, and maybe I should listen to them because they've done it before, they have more experience, or, this is what everyone else is doing. You're going to have thoughts like that. And I think it's important to, consider it. Like, I'm not saying don't listen to people, but I don't think you're ever going to regret sticking to your values. That's one thing I will say. If you are considering the other option because it makes more sense, or it's more logical, or it's more practical, I do think that's something you can end up regretting later. Down the line. I'm not saying do things that are just like reckless, but if your number one value is creativity and that's what makes you happy every day, even if you come back and you're kind of scrambling for a job, I just highly doubt you're going to regret making that time to do that. Experience is important to you. And I think it's important to recognize in those situations, in those conversations that you're having with people where you feel like you have to defend yourself, where you feel like you have to kind of like, but don't you see, like once you start feeling like that, it's okay. You don't have to explain yourself to people. You can try, and if they get it, they get it. If they don't, they don't. But don't take that as a sign that I need to start reevaluating my life, because if the person that you're talking to does not have your values, of course you guys are going to see things differently, and that's okay. And you don't have to change yourself based on someone else's life.
Right.
You know?
I like what you were saying about like the norm is like everyone knows the normal path.
Yeah.
Like college, job, house, family, etc.
Yeah.
If that path doesn't resonate with you, it's easy to feel like an outsider, you know? And that's why I feel one way in which like being misunderstood can be an asset to you is that it kind of forces you into entrepreneurship, because if you don't fit into this existing, if you don't resonate with the existing and normal journey that's out there, you're like, well, that doesn't make sense for me. Well, what can I do? There's no option for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to...
You have to create your own.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
And that's what a lot of entrepreneurs do. They don't see an option. They don't see a community. They don't see a product. They don't see a service. They don't see a lifestyle that matches what they want.
Right.
So they create it.
Yeah, and even if your business is you're just creating a job for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it's not even like something that generates like passive income or something like that. If that's your ideal job, then that's worth it.
That's your dream life. That's what you want to be doing. And I do think there's like, that's why it's important to bask in the fact that you're not understood, because it helps you identify, okay, I'm not seeing that this in anything else I do or anyone else I talk to. Then what is it that I actually want? And I think it actually forces you to sit down and be like, okay, most people's jobs, they have to work 9 to 5. I don't want to work 9 to 5. Right. And maybe that becomes an issue, because a lot of entrepreneurs, they talk about how when they were working jobs, they were always beefing with their employers. They were always, they weren't a good employee because they were constantly making trouble in it. I mean, just look at Steve Jobs. I mean, he just, you know, like, I feel like instead of seeing it as like, oh, I'm just bad, I'm just not a good employee, and labeling it as like, oh, I'm just weird or whatever, investigate that. Like, think about, why is it that I cannot work 9 to 5?
Yeah. Why do I not fit in?
Why do I not fit in? Why don't I care about this this subject or this industry? Maybe it's because I don't agree with this industry. Like, I was talking to an entrepreneur. She was like, she works in an industry she doesn't like because she feels like she doesn't agree with the practices, and that's important to understand. It's not just like you don't like it and like, oh, everyone else likes it. It's like, that's why she's starting her own company now, because she doesn't like what she sees, and like, she wants to work in the industry, but she wants to change it. And that's important, because now you are planting a seed for something that a lot of other people feel, and they don't see examples of it.
So I guess just to sum this all up, being an outsider, being a misfit is actually maybe the greatest gift you can receive.
I think it's a gift.
Because it naturally creates all these constraints around you, which will naturally force you into entrepreneurship or into your dream life or into your own journey that makes sense for you.
And I think that's good, because it's going to feel uncomfortable now, but when you are very happy with what you see in your life and very happy with what you've created, maybe you've even changed a community, maybe you've changed people's lives, who knows? Right. You're looking at yourself in the future going to be like, thank God I felt like a weirdo back then. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't have ever created this. And I think that's something that it's hard to see now while you're in it, while you're always having to defend yourself. You're always having to tell people why you're doing what you're doing, or why you quit your job, or why you don't want to have kids right now. Like, if you can see yourself in the future, you're going to be like, that was 100% worth it. You know, one thing I wanted to say is that when I wanted to bring it back to what you said, like, you see opportunities that other people don't when you're misunderstood, when you think differently about normal things. That's an example of what we were just talking about. Like, I'm just making this up. Like, if you have never seen, maybe you're somebody who finds sports to be a very emotional thing. Okay. Wow. Like, and it doesn't even have to be a wild take. It could be something as simple as that. You're like, I've always been an emotional basketball player. I don't know. That could be a niche,
really
right?
Get into it.
You know, really get into it. And you're just like, I don't see a support group for that. I don't see people talking about that enough. Like, I just feel like sports is a very emotional thing. And you start looking at the realm or the industry of sports in a completely different way. You start tying it to how like emotions can affect your performance, and how
like the psychology of
it. You start looking into all these different things that people who are probably just playing for, you know, performance or playing for money or whatever. They don't see this, right? They're like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. And you're going to get people who are like, it's not that serious, but it's serious to you. And don't take that as a sign as like, I'm just being emotional. You take it as a sign of like, this is important to me. I have a gift in seeing this opportunity that no one else sees. And now I can make something out of this opportunity instead of passing it off. And like, there's a reason why no one else sees it, because your unique characteristics, your traits, your perspective, your experience, that has brought you to a point where you see that as an opportunity. And that's why it's like, I feel like entrepreneurs are like the chosen ones. Like if you look at like any like hero movie, like you're the chosen one because you see it and no one else does. And maybe that creates a whole new side of sports, or a whole new thing within sports where other people are like, finally, like it wasn't that big enough of a deal to them to start it, but it actually is impacting their life. And because you saw that opportunity, you can create something that no one else can create or no one else has created.
And that kind of resonates with my experience starting the Data Entrepreneurs, because this time last year, I was looking for this community of both like technical data people, but also people that are entrepreneurial and they want to start their own business. And I was looking, I would find tons of communities of data people, tons of communities of entrepreneurs,
but never together.
But never together. So I eventually I was like, okay, I have to make it myself because no one else is going to do it. Because it's a lot of work to like, I could tell like when I would like float this idea to people, they're like, yeah, that would be great. But I think the first thought is like, man, that's going to be a ton of work and I'm already busy. And that, you know, that's what held me back. I didn't, you know, probably waited like 3 months before actually like committing and starting the Discord and all that. But I ultimately did. And I'll get messages now and I'll talk to people and they'll say, dude, this is exactly what I was looking for. Like I was looking for this exact community.
That's crazy.
It's like that's who I was. Like I was in that position too. And it's like, okay, I'm not the only one. Other people are after this. So you just never know who else is a weirdo, an outsider, an outcast, like you. Just like you. And they're just waiting for someone to do that extra bit of work. And at the end of the day, it's not a whole lot of extra work. It's maybe like 4 hours a week that I, you know, spend on this community.
But it's important to you. And I think it makes it easier when things are important to you to do them for a long period of time, or do them if they're even like 8 hours extra of work, because it means something to you. And that's the thing. It doesn't, like the person who said that, like obviously it does mean something to him, but not enough for him to start the whole organization. So that's why I feel like, and maybe there's something he's going to start that is like, like someone's going to be like, thank you for starting that, because it means enough to him to start it. And I think that's what's so important about seeing people's individuality and your unique gifts, because that's what everyone can do for each other. Dan Coe was saying that in his YouTube videos, like everyone is an entrepreneur. And I think that's so true, because in any capacity, your gifts help other people. Naturally, there's something you do on a day-to-day that is help, whether it's your job, whether it's how you talk to your friends, whether it's your family. There's something that you do that someone around you can't do, and they appreciate that you can do it for them, or hopefully they do. But like, that's the thing, like we're all unique and talented in our own ways. So like, why would we suppress that because someone else thinks it's weird? Because it's helping someone. Like your gifts are helping someone.